The Sun City Complex in Northwest Province is a world-renowned entertainment resort that annually attracts thousands of international tourists and South Africans. The Rustenburg Valley is also home to the Royal Bafokeng Nation, a vibrant African community where tradition lives hand-in-hand with modern progress. The Royal Bafokeng Stadium near Rustenburg was a FIFA World Cup soccer venue, and the England team was based at the modern Bafokeng Sports Complex.
The Royal Bafokeng Nation is made up of 29 villages and controls some 1,400 square kilometers of land situated on the largest platinum reserve in the world. It is here that one of the toughest events on the South African off-road calendar is run each year. The off-road community converges on the area for the Sun City 400, one of the toughest events in the ABSA Off-Road Championship and a highlight of the motorsport year.
The Sun City 400 again held a July date on the off-road calendar, and competitors went through the documentation process in freezing cold weather. Because of the FIFA World Cup, there was a 2-month break between the Atlas Copco Sugarbelt 400 in KwaZulu-Natal and the Sun City 400. Competitors and team officials had plenty of gossip and talking points on which to catch up. There were also new teams and new sponsors and an air of expectation in the pits.
One of the talking points was the second appearance of the diesel RFS BMW. The car made its debut at the Atlas Copco Sugarbelt 400 in the hands of Chris de Plooy Sr., but this time was to be driven by former South African champion Hannes Grobler. Driving a turbo diesel car was a new experience for him.
Yeah, the torque of the car is unbelievable. You know, the biggest thing, you can't rev the car, so you have to change your driving style totally with the car, and it handles differently as well. But I'm looking forward. I think there's a lot in the car, and maybe not tomorrow, but maybe we'll give it a surprise. The only thing I can tell you is if we haven't got problems, we won't come last.
The lengthy break for the World Cup gave the Factory 4 team the opportunity to do some development work, with former SA champion Neil Woolridge also in an upbeat mood.
I must say the break's been quite nice. We've enjoyed the World Cup. It's been absolutely fantastic. Never in my wildest dreams did I think it would be so great. I'm not a soccer fan, but to see what it's done for the country and just the morale that everyone, it's unbelievable. So it's really been great. But the break's also been nice. We've been able to do a couple of other things, but we've also done a lot of testing on the car. We've made some small changes to the car, which have made a big difference to the car. So we're expecting some good things for this race.
Over in the factory Team Castle Toyota camp, where new cars for Duncan Foss and Anthony Taylor are in the pipeline, the lengthy break between events had also been put to good use.
We had 3 test sessions in between the events, but we're also very tied up and very busy back at base building our new cars. So, but I think we've done a good test, yeah.
Back in harness and having their first outing of the year were Dion Venter and Ian Palmer in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, with the new crew moving into Class D.
I think everybody's starting to get it together. We've been watching and trying to get the recipe right. I think everybody's trying their own thing now. Cliffy will be here today. We'll be back at the old Carnival City. So I think in the next couple of months you'll see probably 4 or 5 Super Ds coming out.
Going into the Sun City 400, Chris Visser and Japie Badenhorst held a 5-point lead over Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege in the Production Vehicle Championship. Third were Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer with 13 points, covering the top 3.
The Donaldson Prologue to determine start positions is a race within a race. The top 5 seated drivers draw for positions, and while crews don't enjoy the Pathfinder role on the road, Toyota driver Anthony Taylor was in a philosophical mood.
Yeah, look, I mean, I see the veld has burnt, so it's normally the roads are pretty clearly marked. The guys do a fantastic job, so I don't think it's going to be too much to be worried about. However, the competition is going to be close, you know. Hopefully I can get in the top 3 for the start for tomorrow, but my biggest concern is to finish this event. I've done it 2 years now and I haven't finished it once, so my biggest aim is to first finish and then hopefully finish on a good result.
In a departure from the norm this year, the Donaldson Prologue was shortened from 100 km to 60 kilometers. The route was bordered by the R565 and the R566 national roads and would give crews an early indication of the sort of conditions they could expect during the race proper.
There was still a decided nip in the air with the chilly wind blowing when Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton led away the production vehicle field on the Donaldson Prologue. Now an established part of the ABSA Off-Road Championship, the Prologue plays a vital role in the overall scheme of the race. Gone are the days when cars started at 2-minute intervals conveniently known as dust gaps. Races are now run in real time, which means crews start as per their Prologue times. With a good grid position uppermost in the minds of the crews, there is some hectic racing.
After disappointing results in the last two races, Gary Bertelt and Andre Vermeulen bounced back in emphatic fashion by winning the Prologue in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, ahead of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the factory Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. There were 11 seconds between the two Toyotas, with third place going to Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore in the Baden Nissan Navara, who also bounced back after two non-finishes in a row.
The Donaldson Prologue invariably throws up a surprise or two. The surprise package this time around was the father and son team of Willem and Dana Vos in the Vossies Toyota Hilux. Prior to the Sun City 400, the pair had produced nothing startling by way of results, but this was home ground for the Rustenburg pair, and they took full advantage of local knowledge to set the fourth fastest time. Another crew with nothing to brag about after 3 rounds of the championship were former SA champions Terence Marsh and Bux Carolyn. They set the 5th fastest time in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara, and their weekend was to get better and better. Marsh is Chief Executive Officer of Prime Media and won the SA Championship in a special vehicle before turning to the production category, while Carolyn has won national titles both as a driver and co-driver. It was a timely return to form for the pair.
There were pockets of spectators scattered all along the route, with the weather starting to warm up. The racing was also hotting up, and only 2 seconds behind Marsh and Carolyn were Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the diesel Ford Ranger, and Mike Whitehouse with Matthew Carlson in the second Regent Racing Navara, with both crews setting exactly the same time. The Regent Racing team is a real family affair, with Whitehouse, Carlson and Marsh all brothers-in-law. Over the last 2 or 3 seasons, Whitehouse and Carlson have also built up an enviable reliability record, and going into the Sun City 400 were one of only 2 crews with a 100% start-finish record in 2010.
In their first season in the production vehicle category, the Free State pair of Loder Brain and Rian Greyling had a good run in the Rubicon Ford Ranger to set the 8th fastest time. The Rubicon entry came in ahead of Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Right behind them were teammates Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege in the diesel RFS BMW, with the veteran former SA champions taking time to settle into a new environment. A slight overshoot cost Grobler and ter Steege a few seconds, but the turbo diesel Beamer was again showing plenty of potential, and around pit lane there was talk of another BMW being commissioned and put into service next season.
There was another steady run from the second Free State crew in the dependable Kobus van Tonde and son-in-law Freddie Kriel in the Unifreight Ford Ranger, and also going along with no problems were Graham Leaf and Mike Lawrenson in one of the ex-factory Ford Rangers, now running in Transcore livery.
Bridges along the route provided good viewing points on what is a spectator-friendly event. On the road, a third Free State crew in George Barkhuizen and David van Wyk were battling with rear brake problems and were dropping back in the AIM Toyota Hilux. Also way down the pecking order were SA champion Duncan Vos and Rob Howie with the Team Castrol Toyota pair, hit by a couple of punctures, but their woes were to pale into insignificance. Championship leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst arrived at the Sun City 400 with 2 wins already under their belts, and the RFS Toyota Hilux pair were among the pre-race favourites. That all changed when they clipped a small bank and joined the Roly Poly Club.
Rolling out of the prologue was a disaster for Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, but there were no such woes for Potchefstroom crew Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy. The reigning champions were running at the front of Class D in the Northern Toyota Hilux and had a comfortable cushion over Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who were showing signs of a little ring rust in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux. The second 4x4 Mega World Toyota in the hands of Picky Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus was running at the front of Class E, where they were one of 3 crews to have won a race this season. The Toyota crew were being shadowed by Adenko 400 winners Gerald Leroux and Willem Pretorius, who were a strong second in the Roacon Ford Ranger.
After giving the RFS BMW its debut in KwaZulu-Natal, Chris de Plooy was back behind the wheel of a Toyota Hilux with reigning Class E Drivers champion Jannie Visser doing the navigating. Jannie is the brother of Chris Visser, and it wasn't turning into a good day for the Visser family. The RFS Toyota went scooting up the wrong road, and by the time they had spotted the error and were once again on the right route, the pair had lost more than a couple of seconds. The incident lent weight to a theory held by the Off-Road Co-Drivers Union that all drivers make for lousy navigators. It also brought the Toyota into the clutches of teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable, who were running third in Class E in the Ford Racing Ranger.
At the end of what was a tough Donaldson prologue, it was time for technical crews to swing into action and get their charges back into A1 condition for the race. For the Atlas Copco team, a maiden pole position put a broad smile on Gary Berthold's face.
It has been a long absence. It's our first pole in SP, and nice to be back there, I must say. I feel a great achievement. Going against the factory teams, giving Toyota a run for their money. It's a great feeling, I must say.
The South African Off-Road Car Racing Association is a proactive organisation and in conjunction with the Regent Racing Team has introduced an initiative to take off-road racing to the sports sponsors. Imperial Motors has close ties with Regent Racing and a number of off-road teams, and Chief Executive Officer Philip Michaud was given VIP treatment at the Sun City 400.
We've been indirectly involved for quite a few years, and the guys have done a terrific job. I really think it's, the event, and if you see the stands that are set up here today, you can really see all the hard work that's gone into it, and it's incredibly competitive. That's always the nice part, to see these guys are chasing one another every month when they get together.
VIPs get an upfront taste of off-road racing by completing the prologue in a Regent Nissan hardbody driven by pro driving instructor Clint Wesson.
It's my first experience out there, so I thought I'd give it a test and see what these navigators actually do. I have a newfound experience for them after what we've just been through. I don't think I've been bounced in 57 Ks like that in my life before, but it was great fun. Really terrific stuff.
In all forms of motorsport, nothing stands still. There is constant development in terms of machinery, with teams always searching for that little extra that will give them an edge over the opposition. The Sports Valley was a marketing tool to create and maintain awareness in a huge variety of products and services is also exploited, and former South African champions Kali and Quinton Silwald had a new sponsor on board in Elegant Fuel and were hoping to give them a dream start.
We hope so. We've done a lot of testing now in this off-season, and with Elegant Fuel coming to the party, a big race for us this weekend. We're going to try and get a good result with the Elegant Fuel bat.
There were also new sponsors on view, and computer company Lab 88 and cellular phone company HTC, who have linked up with the flamboyant Bevan Berthold and a new bat in Class A in a special vehicle category.
Yeah, it's nice to get back into it and commit to it 100%. We had a lovely company, Lab 88 and HTC cell phones come along and help us. And so Lab 88 being a computer company that knew nothing about off-road racing, and yet they did a whole scan to see if it'd be worth it, and they got some very good results from Toyota and Ford and Nissan and that from seeing that you do get coverage. And so obviously the car's fantastic, exciting, a new bat built by Romano and Brandon, and so hopefully we can just keep the sponsors happy and come home and have a good race,
After 2 wins this season, former SA champion Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were leading the championship. The pair finished second in last year's race and had high hopes this time around.
We've had a good start for the year. Since it is always one of our favourite races, we like to come and race here. It suits our car. We've prepared the car, there was lots of time. So we hope for the best, we're going to give it all we can.
After 3 rounds of the championship, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau held a 14-point lead in the special vehicle category. Second were Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who earlier in the season made history by becoming the first Class P crew to win a national event overall.
The Special Vehicle Brigade also draw for prologue start positions, with Shamir Variawa quite happy with number 1 on the road.
No, I think I was looking forward to getting number 1 for this prologue, because I believe the Buckies are starting first, and I would like to be the first special to start because I like the terrain, and we know we always go quick here, so I'm happy to be first.
It didn't take long for the father and son combination of Collie and Quinton Sewell to impress their new sponsor, but it was a close call. The Elegant Fuel Racing bat finished just 4 seconds ahead of the impressive Lab 88 bat of Bevan Bertolt and Donnie Stassen, with the pair slowed in the latter stages by an engine that suddenly started losing power.
Third place went to another father and son combination with an impressive performance by Nardis and Louis Alberts in the healthy-sounding Rapsa bat. They were chased all the way by Colin Matthews and Alan Smith in the Century Racing bat, who were just 6 seconds ahead of reigning SA champion Evan Hutchison and new co-driver Daryl Curtis in the Motorride bat. Behind them, there was another impressive performance from Class B Championship leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who now race a bat in Atlas Copco colours. After their historic win on the Toyota Dealer 400 and some erratic results from the Class A Brigade, the Pretoria crew found themselves lying second in the Special Vehicle Overall Championship.
Despite it being mid-July, there were plenty of wet patches along the route, and Van Staden and Rousseau got a good soaking at a water splash. Hot on the heels of the Atlas Copco crew were brothers David and Gary White, who were going well in the Ruricon bat. The White brothers were the meat in an Atlas Copco sandwich, and charging along behind them were Nick Harper and stand-in co-driver Kevin Hume in the Atlas Copco bat running in Class A. Behind Harper and Hume, who was standing in for the injured Ryan Harper, a small overshoot saw an over-enthusiastic Naheem Mosaji and Rayan Barhania lose a little time in the Maxxi's tyre rack porter.
Looking for their second win of the season, Cape-based brothers Johan and Dion Besadenhout were running third in Class P in the Adenko bat, with Johan the reigning drivers' champion. The brothers had Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara chasing after them in a Zarko, in a category that is now highly competitive, with younger crews locking horns with some highly experienced campaigners.
Off-road racing is very much a family-orientated sport, and running at the front of Class B were Benz Besaidnout and daughter-in-law Lindy, who's married to Dion, who was a couple of cars ahead. The father-in-law and daughter-in-law were having their first outing of the season and were leading Class B ahead of veteran driver Kutsia Labuskaghni, a former Blue Bull scrum half, and his daughter Sandra. For the Labuskaghnis, it was also their first outing of 2010.
Depending on the amount of wear and tear sustained by cars on the prologue, it will either be an easy night for technical crews or one spent burning the midnight oil. At the end of the day, it's also time for some reflections from drivers and co-drivers.
Definitely something in the fuel, isn't it? No, we were very happy to do something for the sponsor, to show them that at least their sponsor is worth something. So we're very happy with the results, yes.
I enjoyed today's prologue tremendously. It's quite rough, but I could do my coordinates quite well. Me and Bess are a great team, I think. We get along very well, and I think we did quite well today.
No moments today. Evan's a very smooth driver. I feel very comfortable with him. And it's just such a relief, there's no big holes and things that you can fall into with a bike. The car suspension is so good, it absorbs everything. So yeah, I feel safe and I'm really having fun.
For some teams, a long day is made even longer if cars have suffered extensive damage on the prologue. Technical crews often work into the wee hours of the morning, but it's all part and parcel of the sport, and another long day lies ahead on the morrow.
Long break between events to accommodate the FIFA World Cup proved to be the ideal time for Absa Vehicle and Asset Finance to put together a team-building exercise for senior managers at the Gerotech test facility outside Pretoria.
Top teams taking part in the Absa Off-Road Championship made cars and drivers available for the day, with Absa staff members sent to get a close-up look at the world of off-road racing. Members of the ABSA Vehicle and Asset Finance Management team would get to ride in the special vehicle and production vehicle category cars that do battle in the ABSA Off-Road Championship, which is run over 8 events throughout South Africa and in Botswana.
Leading Class B Championship contender Johan van Staden is normally partnered by James Rousseau in the Atlas Copco Bat, while Rob Howie sits alongside reigning South African champion Duncan Force in the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. Former South African champion Terence Marsh shares the Regent Racing Nissan Navara with Bucks Carolyn, but for a day, the drivers would ferry some rather nervous passengers around the dirt track at the Gerotech facility.
At times, it was difficult to tell whether passengers were jumping up and down in excitement or through sheer terror. Gerotech is a favourite testing ground for off-road teams, and the drivers know the roads in the complex like the back of their hands. They let it all hang out and the passengers loved it.
Great, huh? Can't believe that the truck can take it, eh? We were probably this side. We were probably airborne like this, for sure. We were like... no, we were like 1.5 meters in there, I tell you.
Oh, wonderful. It was awesome stuff. Awesome. Excellent. Yeah.
Are you still together? It was beautiful. It was excellent.
Thanks. It was good. This is lovely. It's unbelievable. Sure. It's out of this world. I can't explain that.
Back to the real thing, and as the start of the Sun City 400 race approached, a quick canvas of leading drivers produced a mixed bag of tactical approaches to the day ahead.
It's just got to keep the car on the road. There's lots of lurkers, rocks on the sides. Just got to keep the wheels on the tracks and just take it easy in the first part of the race. Just get the car to the end.
Flat out all the way. That's all we're going to do, is just to try and keep it on the road and just go as fast as we can, for as long as we can.
Yesterday was beautiful. We had a clean run, so we're very excited. It's the first time the car feels like a real car. A lot of toothing pains last time, but it sorted out. It's very nice.
Yes, there's strong competition today. The Class E guys are both strong, and they are just behind us. So we're going to keep our heads close and keep on the way.
Plans for today: first loop, keep it safe, keep the pace, and then second loop, we're going to give it all we've got.
Yeah, it's just a pity we had a misfortune yesterday, but today we're starting way back, so that's going to be a challenge.
The race was made up of 2 loops of the same course, with the first section a twisty route heading towards the villages of Chaneng and Robega.
There was drama at the start, even before Cully and Quinton Silwald set off in the Elegant Fuel Bat. An engine problem forced second place Bevan Bertholt and Dani Stassen in the Lab 88 Bat to miss the start, but that was not all. The Rapsa Bat of Nardus and Louis Alberts broke down on the start line, with the rest of the field lined up behind the stricken car. The large crowd taking in the excitement and drama of the start were all wrapped up in their winter woolies on another freezing cold morning. Race officials quickly moved in to push the Rapsa Bat out of the way as the rest of the field waited to get underway. Colin Matthews and Alan Smith led what turned into a spectacular charge of heavy machinery as cars blasted off the line at intervals determined by the times they set on the Donaldson Prologue.
It was a spectacular start to the race as cars chased each other down a short section of tar before heading onto a route that was going to produce dust, and more dust.
While the rest of the field were heading for the heels with some hectic racing already starting to develop, the Rapsa service crew cut off a lawn sight as they slowly pushed the Order Combat Bat back to the pits. As veteran driver Nardus Alberts climbed out of the car, he wryly claimed a new off-road record.
Oh, this is a brand new record. 2 meters. Well, it wasn't bad. It's a brand new record. I think I did 2 meters. I'm not sure what is wrong yet, but we had such a good time trial. My brand new gearbox, and yeah, we didn't go far. I'm sure we're going to take it apart and just see what happened. I'd like to think maybe that it's a drive shaft rather than a gearbox problem.
Out on the course, there was plenty of early action. At the front of the field, Collie and Quinton Silwald overshot a 90-degree left, but were soon back on course. They then took an early morning bath at a river crossing, which was the last thing they wanted on a freezing cold morning.
The Silwalds were being chased by the Century Racing bat of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith, with helicopter footage catching some spectacular action from the pair. Matthews and Smith are renowned as chargers, but in recent seasons have suffered from reliability problems that have led to a pretty dismal finish record.
There were also early problems for reigning drivers champion Evan Hutchison and off-road motorcycle star Darrell Curtis, who was having his first outing in the Motorrike bat. While Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were making good progress in the Atlas Copco bat, the Motorrike car was slowly grinding to a halt and out of the race.
What do you give it?
We've just lost power steering, man. Just right here, 2 seconds back. No idea what it is, so we'll jump out and have a look.
There was also an early morning bath for David and Gary White, who were sticking to their pre-race plan to push as hard as they could for as long as they could. Nick Harper and Kevin Hume set up spectacular plumes of water as they took their bath, and it took the Atlas Copco bat a few seconds to start firing on all cylinders. Wherever you looked on the course, there was close racing and cold spectators. Team Castrol Toyota pair Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton had taken the production vehicle lead and were being chased by Naeem Musaji and Rehan Badania in the Maxxis Tyrak Porter.
Prologue winners Gary Bertelt and Andre Vermeulen also sent up a spectacular amount of water at the river crossing, but had the luxury of a windscreen and an insulated cab. Behind the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, the Baden Nissan Navara of Thomas Rundle and former SA champion Johan Moore was still in third. They were being chased by Terence Marsh and Bux Carolyn, with the Regent Racing crew running into a spot of bother in the thick dust.
The Navara stalled, and as Marsh and Carolyn were ready to get underway once more, the Team Ford Racing Ranger of Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer zipped past in thick dust that severely hampered visibility.
Next on the list for Woolridge and Scholthammer were the local pair of Willem and Dana Vos in the Vossies Toyota Hilux. The Vos father and son combination are based in Rustenburg, and fourth on the prologue was by far their best result of the season. The pair didn't take too kindly to being overtaken by the diesel-powered Ford Ranger and set off after the vastly more experienced Woolridge and Scholthammer.
A terrific dice developed between the Ford and the Toyota, with the two cars separated by seconds and belting along at a rapid rate of knots.
With the helicopter chasing after the two cars, the Ford gradually started to open up a gap on the Toyota, and Woolridge and Scholthammer looked to have won a keen contest with a fast pair, at least in the short term.
Former SA champions Terence Marsh and Bux Carolyn were working their way through a slow section of the course. In these conditions, the utmost caution is needed to avoid what is known in the trade as lurkers. Rocks or tree stumps camouflaged by grass can cause a puncture or rip a wheel off. And one of the secrets of success in off-road racing is to know when to push hard and when to let the brain take over from the foot on the accelerator pedal.
Brothers-in-law Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were shadowing brother-in-law Terence Marsh in the sister Regent Racing Nissan Navara. Whitehouse and Carlson were looking at the race from a risk and reward point of view and had decided not to take undue chances. Despite a keen run on the prologue, Variawa and Rousseau started in 15th place among the specials, but steadily worked their way through the field.
Also making good progress, but still around 7 minutes behind the leaders, were Jimmy Zahos and Pierre Jordan in the Cobalt Racing Porter. Zahos is a former quad racer and another of the special vehicle flyers. The Porter quickly got past Whitehouse and Carlson, who were now coming under a little pressure from Free Staters Lodebrain and Rian Greyling in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger. After a slow start to the year, De Bruyn and Greyling are coming to grips with the Ford Ranger and improve with every outing.
A puncture dropped Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau way back down the field, and the Total Porter team had to start overtaking cars for a second time. After passing Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux, they muscled their way past John Thompson and Clinton McNamara. After a high-speed chase through the veld, Johan Rousseau then hauled in Whitehouse and Carlson for the second time and set off after Jimmy Zahos and Pierre Jordan in the Cobalt Racing Porter. Johan and Rousseau were in no mood to take any prisoners and were again skiving through the field.
Picking their way through a much slower section of the route were veteran Ernest Corbett and son-in-law Warwick Goosen in a futuristic-looking Century Racing CR2. The pair won Class P last year, but this time around were further down in the pecking order. Behind them, Glenn Gibson and Father Rob in another Class P entry were stranded in a river crossing, with Class D leaders Dion Fenter and Ian Palmer in the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux easing their way past. The Gibsons were still stationary in midstream when Class E leaders Gerald LaRue and Willem Pretorius also eased their way past in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger. River crossings always provide for some spectacular action and are a magnet for off-road enthusiasts, with the second half of the first loop of the Sun City 400 heading for Rebecco towards Mogono. Crews will again be tested by the mixture of tight and fast sections on the way towards Tsitsing and Mahile and back to the Sun City complex for the compulsory stop at the designated service point.
At the front of the field, an exciting battle had developed as Nick Harper and Kevin Hume in the Atlas Copco Bat and Colin Quinton Sewalt in the Elegant Fuel Bat took each other on. Hume, standing in for Ryan Harper, who broke his shoulder in an off-road motorcycle accident, had caught and passed the prologue winners, but only seconds separated the two cars as they headed for the designated service point at the end of the first lap of the race. Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were comfortably leading the production vehicle category when disaster struck. Coming together with a Harper-Hume bat saw the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux retire with suspension damage.
Still on a charge and up to third in the special vehicle category was Shamir Variawa, who was reveling in the conditions, and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter. Jimmy Zahos and Pierre Jordan were also having a good run in the Cobalt Racing Porter, although tension was starting to surface between driver and co-driver. With the demise of the Taylor Houghton Toyota Hilux, Terence Marsh and Bix Carolyn found themselves leading the production vehicle category in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. From time to time, the pair were at odds with the roadbook, and when they again strayed from the route, Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore nipped into the lead in the Baden Nissan Navara.
Prior to the Sun City 400, 8th place was the best result to date for Marsh and Carolyn, who were lying 12th in the Production Vehicle Championship, while Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore had 2 non-finishes to their name and had yet to score a point in the X-Factory Nissan Navara. The two crews were now fighting for the production vehicle lead, and with only seconds between them, it was game on.
It was inevitable that somewhere in the northwest bush someone would produce a Vuvuzela, but competing against a horde of internal combustion engines is an unequal contest. It was also a losing battle for Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson, who were passed first by Herman and Richard Sewald in the Sewald Racing SVR, and then by Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell in the Gibson Plant Hire SVR. A broken bolt made steering the Regent Racing Navara difficult, and Whitehouse and Carlson were forced to slow their pace.
Although Herman and Richard Sewald were having a clean run with no problems, the Ballabora-based father and son team were making little headway. They were battling in the tight sections of the route and were fighting hard to stay in front of Gibson and Campbell, who'd built up a head of steam and were also carving their way through the field from 21st at the start. There was no way Whitehouse and Carlson could stay with the 2 SVRs, and their main objective was to get to the designated service point without any further mishap. A good battle had developed between Class B leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau and Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara, but it was the end of the road for the Rubicon pair of David and Gary White, who ground to a halt with a broken gearbox.
ABSA National Championship newcomers Neil Mayer and Leon Muller were busy putting together a solid race in a Zarco Magnum, but were being closed down by a pair of SP-class Toyotas. Reigning production vehicle drivers champion Duncan Force and Rob Howie had worked their way through the field after starting 13th in the Team Castrol Toyota, while Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen in the Atlas Copco Toyota were fighting back after a spate of punctures set them back on their heels.
Although they'd slipped back a place or two, the Rustenburg-based father and son team of Willem and Dana Vos were putting together by far their best race of the season, but came to a temporary halt when the Vossies Toyota Hilux picked up a puncture. Behind them, veteran Bodo Bertholdt at 68, the oldest driver in the race, and Philip Herselman in the Atlas Copco Bat politely moved over to let Graham Leith and Mike Lawrenson through in the Transcore Ford Ranger. Changing wheel on an off-road vehicle in the middle of nowhere is not a simple process, but for Willem and Dana Vos, worse was to come.
The flat tyre had cost Willem and Dana Vos a couple of minutes, and in a competitive off-road field, that is a lifetime. A puncture cost Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau a special vehicle category win on last year's Sun City 400, and 3 punctures had sent Gary Bertholdt and Andre Vermeulen tumbling down the field. The Vossies were pushing hard when they clipped a rock, and in the huge accident that followed, both escaped injury.
There was a far less dramatic end to the race for Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege. The diesel RFS BMW developed an oil leak, and rather than risk a blown motor, the experienced pair decided to call it a day. The Beamer again showed potential, but discretion is the better part of valor. There were no such problems though for teammates Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren, who were making good progress in the RFS Toyota Hilux with 2 punctures their only problems. Behind the SP-class entry, Colin Matthews and Alan Smith were pushing hard, and had so far managed to avoid the reliability problems that have plagued them in the past. Punctures had also ruined the day for Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the diesel-powered Ford Racing Ranger, and they were also forced into playing the catch-up game.
Reigning champions Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy had moved to the front of the Class D field in the Northam Toyota Hilux. The Potchefstroom crew had Johan and Dion Besadenhout-Sedenko Bat hot on their heels, with the pair enjoying a clean run so far. Behind the Besadenhouts, Father Bez and Dion's wife Lindy had taken control of Class B in another Adenko Bat, with Besadenhout Senior having his first outing in 11 months. There was a story of good sportsmanship attached to the 2 cars following the Besadenhouts.
When Louw de Bruin and Rian Kreiling beached the Rubicon Ford Ranger on a sandbank, Unified Ford crew Cobus van Tonda and Freddie Kriel stopped and hauled them back onto the road. The time lost helping their fellow Free Staters back into the race left van Tonda and Kriel under attack from Marius and Yolanda Fourie in one of the early spec bats.
The race was starting to take its toll on machinery, and the Ernest Corbett Warwick Hooson Century Racing CR2 had lost all its rear bodywork, but was still going strong. Enthusiastic supporters were urging on the pair, who won Class P in last year's race and were again handily placed. Not far behind the Century Racing pair, brothers Brett and Steve Parker had moved ahead of Class E leaders Gerald Leroux and Willem Pretorius in the Rubicon Ford Ranger. For the Parkers, a finish was top priority in what was their first outing in the ex-Naheem Moussa-G Jimco, while Leroux and Pretorius were looking for their second win of the season.
And there was more drama when Daniel and Louw Zili contrived to crash the Orangeworks Aceco into a deep ditch at speed. When the dust cleared, it was clear that they weren't going anywhere in a hurry. That was the end of their race with this car.
The incident provided local spectators at a bridge crossing with a talking point, with the Aceco well and truly buried in sand and bush when Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable cruised past in the Ford Racing Ranger. The KZN crew were lying second in Class E and had so far enjoyed a clean run.
the ZD's bruised egos and an ace car with a rearranged front suspension added up to a day to rather forget.
It's cultivation.
Yeah, it's fast, eh? Fast. Sometimes you don't react quick enough. But we're all right.
The first car to arrive at the designated service point back at the Sun City complex was the elegant fuel bat of former SA champions Karl Heinz and Quinton Silwald. As crews streamed into the pits, everyone had the same tale to tell. It was a tough race.
We're enjoying it, it's lovely, and the guys are pressurizing all the time from the back. We expect them to come in soon, so there's a lot of pressure on us today.
It's going great. We had 23rd this morning. We knew we had to put the pressure on. We drove as hard as we can. Eventually passing a lot of guys, overtaking a lot of guys, but the guys did not give you away. So there's a bit of a problem there, but nevertheless, I guess we'll see what happens in the last stage.
Very tough, very tough. Yeah. But we keep going and hopefully we can pick up a couple more.
I'm second, I think, at the moment. The P-class coming in, P22 is for me. But going good. I think the second loop will be better because now I know what to expect.
Yeah, we've had some big racing out there, big racing. Bumper cars, we've had everything. But it's tough. I mean, finishing is going to be big, yeah.
And there's a lot of casualties and a lot of dust. And it's going magic with my new nav.
Dusty. Dusty. And we've had 2 flats. We haven't hit anything, but we've had 2 flats. But otherwise, a little bit of catch up.
Hey, it's so dusty. You can't believe this morning really battling in the dust. And we're battling with the screamers for some reason, but we're pushing on. 2 punctures, which has slowed us down, and yeah, we've got another lap to go, so let's see what happens.
Now, the water is not so bad, the dust is bad. We took off very close to each other, so we're out of brakes, so we struggled a little bit for the last about 50 k's. It's a rough road. Shaking.
We're having a great race. We managed to catch and pass the guys early on, but I made a navigational error about 60 k's back. And the Ruakwan guys got past us.
At the designated service point, the first 6 cars on the road were special vehicles, with Marsh and Carolyn leading the production vehicles ahead of Rundle Moore and the Bertolt Vermeulen combinations.
Train drivers don't have to contend with rough roads and dust, but the scene was set for drama on the second and final loop of the Sun City 400, with Cully and Quinton Silwald looking for their first win of the season and a dream result for their new sponsor. The elegant fuel bat was sounding healthy, but on a route that was typical of this race, there was pressure in the form of Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, who had taken the total porter from the 15th at the start to second in the special vehicle category.
Young drivers of the future were in abundance along the route, with Colin Matthews and Alan Smith running a strong third in the Century Racing Bat. Matthews is one of the quickest off-road drivers in the country, but the reliability bogey was to strike once again and sideline the pair, who've only finished 1 race this year.
After starting 21st, an impressive run in the Gibson Racing SVR took Clint Gibson and Gary Campbell into 3rd place among the special vehicles at the designated service point, although there were ominous signs all was not well with the car. The KwaZulu-Natal crew are vastly underrated, but gear selector and power steering problems were able to consign them to the did not finish column in the final results. Behind the SVR, it had not taken Johan van Staden and James Rousseau long to move to the head of the Class P field in the Atlas Copco Bat, and they were challenging strongly for an overall podium. 2 other Atlas Copco crews were also coming on strongly, with Gary Bertolt and Andre Vermeulen back in the lead in the production vehicle category, and Mick Harper and Kevin Hume 4th overall in the Atlas Copco Bat.
The Regent Racing Navara of Terence Marsh and Bucks Carolyn was now around 20 seconds behind the Berthold Formeron Toyota, with Thomas Rundle and Johan Moore a menacing third in the Baden Nissan Navara. In an unusual but perfectly legal development, Jimmy Zars decided at the designated service point to dispense with the services of co-driver Pierre Jordan. He was now on his own in the Cobalt Porter and was being chased by Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Kriel in an outstanding performance in the Unifreight Ford Ranger. In turn, the Unifreight car was coming under pressure from the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux of Duncan Foss and Rob Howie.
There is also no dust problem in the skies, but down on terra firma, it was a major hassle for crews. It had not been a happy day for former champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer in the factory Ford Ranger TDCI, but the pair were on track to score valuable championship points. Valuable points were also on offer for Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux, while running with back brakes only at Drop Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara into second place in Class P after an impressive performance.
While this youngster looked as though he would be more at home on a motorcycle, Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst had also turned in an outstanding display in the RFS Toyota Hilux. After rolling in the prologue and starting at the back of the field, they were into the top 10 and also chasing valuable points. For the second year running, Ernest Corbett and Warwick Goosen were heading for a Class P podium finish in the Century Racing CR2, and it opened up a big gap over Archie Rutherford and former Springbok water polo player Craig Doubtfire in the Regent Racing Jimco.
It had not been an easy race for the Regent crew, who were hit by a puncture and had to replace a ball joint at the designated service point. Going into the Sun City race, Rutherford and Doubtfire were second in the Class P Championship, and points for fourth place would do their title hopes cause no harm.
By now, Bez Besaidnout and daughter-in-law Lindy were the only survivors in Class B and were cruising along in the Adenco Bat. Behind them, Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable had moved into the front of the Class E field in the Ford Factory Ranger and had a foot in the door for their second win this season. A steady drive had also taken the Fenta Palmer 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux into the Class D league.
With the race now entering its closing stages, Cully and Quinton Silwald had a tight grip on proceedings. The father and son team had a lead of slightly more than a minute, but more importantly, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau had decided to stop chasing the leaders and concentrate instead on consolidating their championship lead. The team total pair figured pushing for a win too risky on a treacherous route and were happy to settle for second.
After a disappointing debut for the Atlas Copco team on the Atlas Copco Sugarbelt 400, the impressive Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were back in business. Third overall and first in Class B was another tremendous performance from the Pretoria crew, who were 27 seconds ahead of teammates Nick Harper and Kevin Hume, who grabbed the last podium place in Class A.
The fluctuating fortunes that characterized the production vehicle category continued, with Terence Marsh and Bucks Carolyn back in the lead in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara after Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen were hit by their fourth puncture of the race. The Atlas Copco pair were up and down the field like a yo-yo, but had also bounced back after a disappointing Atlas Copco Sugarbelt 400.
The final podium place went to Thomas Rundle and Johan Moore, who finally produced the goods in the ex-Duncan Foss championship-winning Baden Nissan Navara.
The decision by Jimmy Zahorst to go it alone on the second loop opened a few eyes, but a top 5 finish in the Cobalt Porter was a praiseworthy effort from a driver who has quickly established himself as one of the characters in off-road racing. Fifth in the production vehicle category was also a praiseworthy effort from Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Kriel in the slightly battered Unifreight Ford Ranger.
Second in the highly competitive Class P was just reward for a gutsy showing from Don Thompson and Clinton McNamara. The Swaziland pair will be a threat over the rest of the season, and there are half a dozen or so crews in Class P with winning potential. There was an equally spirited showing from Chris de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren in an RFS Toyota Hilux that was missing a few body panels. A slight overheating problem and a couple of punctures were the only factors spicing up the Pretoria crew's day.
There was also a terrific performance from two-time winners Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in a second RFS Toyota Hilux. After starting from the back of the field, they fought their way up the leaderboard, with 7th giving them enough points to stay ahead in the championship race. Former champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer were a disappointing 8th in the diesel Ford Ranger, but will also be happy to have picked up valuable points.
Veteran Ernest Corbett vies with Bodo Bertolt as the oldest active driver in the ABSA Off-Road Championship, and third in Class P with son-in-law Warwick Goosen opened their points account this season. The design of the Senshi Racing CR2 also provides for crew comforts missing in other special vehicles. Behind Corbett and Goosen, another veteran driver and Bez Besaidnout took the Class B win, with daughter-in-law Lindy sitting next to him in the Adenko Bat.
The Regent Racing Gymco, in the hands of Archie Rutherford and Craig Doubtfire, finished strongly, with 4th place in Class P, providing them with useful championship points. The two veterans were a long way behind Class P winners Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, and right at the end were caught by Class E winners Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable in the factory Ford Racing Ranger to land their second victory in young Woolridge's first season of national championship racing.
In the Battle of the Fords, the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger of Gerald Leroux and Willem Pretorius was a solid second in Class E. The pair led at the DSP but faded over the second half of the race and gradually lost touch with Woolridge and Huxtable.
Behind the Class E crew, Dion Fented and Ian Palmer took an unexpected win in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, with the pair having their first outing of the season. Third in Class E were brothers Diederik and Dani Huttung in the Transcore Toyota Hilux. It was a steady, if unspectacular, performance, but one that also gave the Huttungs their first points of the season. It was a solid performance in difficult conditions for Class E cars.
After leading Class D at the halfway mark of the race, reigning champions Dewald van Breda and Johan de Tooy were hit by brake problems over the second half of the race. That saw the Northam Toyota gradually fall back, with Class E contenders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus also having a miserable time of it in the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux.
At the finish back at the Sun City Complex, Team Total and Elegant Fuel supporters were anxiously waiting for their favourites to arrive at the finish. In a dream result that saw them give their new sponsor a win first time out, it was Karl Heinz and Quinton Sulwald who crossed the line first in the Elegant Fuel Bat.
For the second year in a row, Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau was second in the Total Porter, with Johan van Staden and James Rousseau finishing with a flourish in the Atlas Copco Bat to take third and win Class P.
The champagne flowed on the podium, with former SA champion Kali Sulwald a happy man indeed.
The route was tough. It's a real off-road race, and we really enjoyed it. Quinton was on the ball, no problems at all. The cars going like clockwork. We were very happy.
A first win of the season for Connie and Quinton Sulwald, with another fine performance from Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who finished on the podium and won Class P.
There was also plenty of expectation among team supporters as everyone waited for the first production vehicle to reach the finish. There was unbridled joy in the Regent Racing camp when Terence Marsh and Bux Carolyn drove into view in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara.
At the finish, there were only 23 seconds between the Regent Racing pair and Gary Bertolt and Andre Vermeulen in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. A popular third went to Thomas Rundle and Johan Moore in the Baden Nissan Navara.
Victory rocketed Terence Marsh and Bux Carolyn up the championship table and gave privateer teams a third win in 4 races in the ABSA Championship.
A very tough event, probably one of the most demanding events that I've done over the last 5 years. It was really tough, but we had a nice clean run. Wasn't without issues. We had a few issues along the way, but great result, great result.
A narrow win then for Terence Marsh and Bucks Carolyn, and further down the field a great performance from teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable to break into the top 10 in a Class E car.
Next up in the ABSA Off-Road Championship is the 4x4 Mega World 400 on August the 27th and 28th at Carnival City.
Catch the action on Supersport, your world of champions.